The Institute of Chartered Management Professionals, ICMP, is one of the leading professional organizations for management professionals. ICMP provides the leading resource for corporate leadership and management positions in the business world and government organizations. Both professionals and employers benefit from the ICMP certifications, which are well recognized globally as a valid indicator of managerial competency and leadership potential. Today's management professionals and aspirant professionals require a well-rounded skill set and competency, with our mission to support anyone to become an outstanding management professional. We combine theory, application, productivity, and intuition skills into a focused, self-paced program that can be taken anytime, anywhere. We pick up where business school leaves off to teach you professional management of practical world, on-the-job aspects related to strategy, operations, finance, human resources, procurement, marketing, communication, and quality. ICMP provides credential of Chartered Management Professional, CMP, to lead the organization and certification of Certified Professional Manager, CPM, in various disciplines of management to lead specific areas of management. It's time to make your resume stand out among other candidates and to provide potential employers with the confidence that you can succeed in your role as a CEO or head of department. It is mandatory for the holders of these prestigious designations to support the development of the management profession by contributing continuing professional development, CPD, and abiding by the Institute Code of Ethics.
Hi, everybody. So we are starting for 15 minutes. My name is Eric Freudenreich. It means rich of joys. I'm living in France, and I want to share you during 50 minutes fraud risk management principle, a kind of up-to-date. I will present you the COSO ACFE framework dated 2023, and we will see if we can start maybe with a nice break. I'm not sure if it should work or not. Otherwise, you will be able anytime to use the chat to raise question, and I will go at the end through the chat and try to answer and address some question.
Right, Eric, you can start now.
I can start now? Okay.
Yeah.
So let's share my screen. Okay.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, thank you. Now it's better. So if you want to know more about me, to make it short, please go on LinkedIn. You see my professional designation. I'm also lecturer in fraud at the French University Paris-Dauphine for almost 15 years. Thank you for joining this webinar. At the end of the webinar, so I will answer the question raised in the chat. You will also receive a continual professional education, the Institute of Chartered Management Professional, who is hosting this free webinar today. Thank you for hosting this webinar. So I'm going just through the agenda. We will discuss the challenge and issue you are facing managing fraud risk today. An overview of the key concept of the ACFE COSO framework, focus on the point of focus, and at the end a summary of key principle, and depending on your question and your thought and best practice in the chat, we will continue to discuss 10 minutes at the end. Okay, so first of all, I want to ask you, or please write it down for you. I try to go through the chat. No, I'm frozen, sorry. Okay. The idea is to to summarize, to make a survey if possible, and otherwise write it down. Just think, what are your issues and challenges in managing fraud? Maybe the idea is to address a more frequent issue and challenge today, like is that increased complexity of fraud due to cyber attack, crypto assets, identity theft, or the need for advanced data analysis to detect fraud, vulnerabilities related to remote work, or compliance with evolving standard and regulation. That's the issue you may face today. And the challenge, do you have an effective prevention? Are you able to identify fraud in advance? Do you have some real-time fraud response with rapid detection control? And what is the level of your awareness in your entity? And last challenge you may have is incident management. Do you have a clear and coordinated process through all your entity? That's a key point, which make interesting to go through this new framework. And I'm starting with the overview. So first of all, this is a second edition. I want to present the 2023 edition. It's a second edition, but you can see you had an edition before. It's an update of the first one in 2016. And the one from 2016 was superseding also the previous one from 2008. What is interesting about this new guide is that it has 116 pages. It's a PDF, but I cannot share to copyright the PDF with you. This PDF is a web PDF, so it means you cannot. You can use it remotely, but you need to access to it with ID and password. You cannot download it and print it, and you cannot print any pages of this 116 pages. That means what I'm doing now, sharing what I understood from this should be helpful to go faster after if you decide to buy it. You will find it on most of the sponsoring organization of the COSO, like the Institute of Internal Auditor or the Association of Certified Fraud Examiner. For members, the cost is around $60 US. For non-member, around $80 US. It is worth to buy it. I let you decide by yourself. You must know within the 116 pages, you have 18 pages you can already download for free. It's the executive summary. The executive summary is weighting 15% of the full guide, because you have 18 pages. And after that, you have the principle, and each principle, you have 5 principles regarding fraud risk management. And these 5 principles each address one chapter. So these 5 chapters are presented on 58 pages. So it's 50% of the guide. And on page 75, you have 40 pages of appendices, and I will go to explain you which kind of appendices you can find and what is the value added of all this information. So that's for the framework. What did not change between 2016 and 2023? It's only one slide, no, 2 slides, sorry. One is a practical definition you can find in the executive summary. it did not change. So I'm not going to read it. I just advise you that it did not change. The second point is more important. You have the framework is proposing two approaches in the implementation of the guide, which is aligned with the COSO internal control of 2030. So the first approach is to make a limitation to the principle 2, the chapter 2 of the guide, which is risk assessment. And that's one approach, one simple approach. But the second approach, which is recommended, is to apply the entire COSO ACFE guide. So it means all the 5 chapters. Okay? So the two approaches are presented also in the executive summary. What did not change also, but it may be not obvious, but because that's all COSO tools, it's always the same. And you know, on my slide, at the top, on the link side, you can see a thermometer. It's to measure temperature. So this tool is helpful for assessing the effectiveness of fraud risk management. And to make a conclusion, a positive conclusion about the effectiveness of fraud risk management, it's like the COSO for internal control. You need that all the 5 principles are present and functioning. So present, it means those are existing and functioning. So you can repeat this principle and they are still existing. The second point, which is also obvious, is that it should operate in an integrated manner like the COSO is, because you know the COSO for internal control is entitled Integrated Framework. So it means together. All principles should be working together. That means another principle should not create a weakness for an effective principle from you assess as effective, and at the end you find a weakness through the process. Then you cannot conclude that your fraud risk management is effective. That does not change. Okay. What does not change at all is fraud risk management. And this graph is also in your executive summary. So it's to establish, so please focus on the fraud risk management policy. So you need a policy, and it belongs to the governance of fraud risk management. Then you are more in the second chapter about performing a comprehensive fraud risk assessment. So that's the second part. The third part are dealing with control activities to be developed, selected, deployed, and you should have preventive as well as detective fraud control activities. And later on, it is important to establish a fraud reporting process and to coordinate approach to investigation and corrective action after the investigation. So the monitoring, 5th principle did not change. So the process is the same as in 2016. So on the next slide, what hasn't changed, and that's the last one, after we will see what changed. You can see a bridge or transfer table between the 5 chapters, which are all, each chapter is one principle, and that's the chapter of for the fraud risk management, and they are correlated to the COSO internal control 17 principle from the framework from 2030. I highlighted in each chapter some keyword like the fraud risk management program at the beginning, And you can see on the other side the 5 principles from the framework for internal control, the fraud risk assessment. You know, the color are important because you have so many principles. And we will see also that we have a point of focus, like in the COSO, you have principle and component. Here you have principle, chapter, and on the other side, point of focus. So it's a different level. So both are correlated. What is new? There is a more link between fraud risk management and deterrence. Deterrence in the executive summary, this word is occurring 12 times. In the full guide, you have the word 31 times. In the executive summary, there is a part insisting on deterrence, and deterrence is more explained in the control activities, so in the principle 3, in the chapter 3, and it did not change because it was already a point of focus regarding deterrence, and deterrence is explained the best way to promote deterrence at this point of focus is to have some preventive and detective control and to embed fraud risk management in the governance, in the culture of an organization. So it's new, they are insisting, but deterrence is not something new at all. The two COSO framework 2013 and 2016 about, so the first one about internal control, the second one about enterprise risk management are linked to the fraud risk management. There is nothing special, just the bridge, which is not new, and they are mentioned. So it means you need these two frameworks, and in addition, on the top or in between, you should have the COSO ACFE framework as an additional tool to prevent and detect, and it's also to deter first, to prevent and detect fraud. I told you that in 2016, in the previous guide, we had already 5 principles, but we had 36 point of focus. Now we have 41 point of focus, so 41 minus 36, it means you have 5 new point of focus, and out of 5, 4 are related to data analysis tools. Data analysis tools are compared to another traditional tools, or they are compared, but it means you are on one side you have traditional tools like whistleblowing system, which is also a new point of focus. On 2 pages, it's presented on 2 pages, and it's the first, one of the first point of focus. But data analysis are well explained in many different principles. The internal control and fraud risk management, it explains also how they differ, but or how they are interacting. So it means that internal control is helpful for fraud risk management, but may not always be enough. So in one part, in the principle 3 about control activities, you have some table, and in this table you can assess the maturity of internal or efficiency of an internal control activity, and if you consider it's not the residual risk is not acceptable, then you should add additional internal control more dedicated to fraud risk management to reduce, to continue to reduce the risk. So the evaluation of the effectiveness of existing control, that's linked, and both bullet points are linked together. And I told you one new point of focus is dealing with the fraud reporting system presented on 2 pages out of the 116 of the guide. Changes in internal and external source of risk and type of fraud. I will give you some details later on, but it's more external source like cyber attack and so on, and some sophisticated also IT attack are presented there. The last point, which has changed, are the appendices. You have 7 appendices in this guide. In the previous one, you had 19. Why did we lose 12 appendices? We did not lose them. They were transferred online on the ACFE website, and it's an open access. You can click on fraud risk management tools, and you will find all the tools that could be then updated without needing to update the full guide. So and it's also easier to have access. I want to mention a few of these tools. One very interesting, free of access, was prepared by Cranf of the guide. It's an anti-fraud playbook on 60 pages. So you just have, if you're a member of the Certified Fraud Examiner Association, you have direct access when you log in. If you are not member, you just have to put your email and you will have also access. It will help you to assess the maturity of your fraud risk management. So it's very helpful tool on 60 pages. You have a lot of template about scorecard, analytic tests you can make, a lot of open source, and I think it's very interesting to go through all this additional information which are not anymore in the guide. Okay, now let's have a look in the point of focus detail. So you can see here the first principle about fraud risk management program. You have for this one 7 points of focus, with one being new, the last one about data analytics. So the first point of focus is linked to commitment from management, from the culture, from the ethical environment. So it requires an effective business ethics program. I give you some extract. It's written, for instance, it's legislative requirement. So the compliance should be a floor, not a ceiling. And it's expected to instill that philosophy in the fiber of the organization culture. So the first point of focus is very interesting. The application of fraud risk management is also explaining, is mentioning the risk appetite and the tolerance from the COSO enterprise risk management from 2016. And it's also a disclaimer, because it's not a standard or right risk appetite. Management and board choose a risk appetite within an informed understanding of the trade-off. Another point which is mentioned here is the tone at the top from the COSO, but it's also the tone and conduct. So the word conduct seems to be interesting if you have a code of conduct. So the tone of the top should create a positive work environment for employee, high priority, and for hiring and promoting the appropriate employees. So it's part of informal and soft control, which are different from transactional level, like segregation of duties. To support the fraud risk governance, you have 16 items to assess if there are enough support from the board of directors governing properly the fraud risk management. For instance, there are some expectations like an understanding of fraud corruption, is the audit committee empowering the team, and so on. So it's kind of turn up the top and more. It's include also the independence and the mind of the board. About establishing, I'm going on the fourth point of focus. It expected a governance role and responsibility through the organization. What is expected here is a policy translated in local language. The idea in this comprehensive fraud risk management program. So the question is, what is a fraud risk management program? So first, it's to have a policy and to avoid, for instance, cooking the book, and they mention this, and mention also there is no matter how talented individual are and how their position are. So at each level, they need to be fully respecting this policy to be translated in all languages. So if I go through the point 5 about the fraud risk management program, one way to have it formal is to document it, and the COSO again is asking the level of documentation depend on what you want. It can be the best practice is to have it very documented, but it's not mandatory. And another point is importance of fraud awareness training. That's also in part of the fraud governance program. The fraud awareness training is expecting, we expect also a short document available for employee, vendors, customer, and for public organization, also available to the public and legislative bodies. And what is important also in this the participation to the training, the adherence to the policy should be tracked. So the acknowledgement should be tracked. That's another point. And there are a lot of tools also available on the Association of Certified Fraud website. On the point 6, what is important also to communicate fraud risk management at all level. On this point of focus 6 is to have a standing agenda item for board and key committees. So is it always at the agenda of boards? And here is also mentioned the whistleblowing system. Coming to the last point of focus here about data analytics, there is an example. If you are using a mobile app and you can use data mining, And for instance, in this mobile app, if employees are looking for what is the conflict of interest, if you see that there are 5,000 occurrences, then it's an opportunity to update the training and policy around conflict of interest, and even to listen, learn, can help to identify new risk trends or policy gaps, depending on what was requested in these tools. Okay, let's go on the next principle about fraud risk assessment. And I pointed it with an icon on the principle 8 of the COSO internal control framework, the risk of fraud, which is direct linked here. And there is nothing new, but for instance, in the first point of focus, involve appropriate level of management. It's interesting to remind that it's dealt with brainstorming activities, and this kind of task should involve the management, but could also involve external consultant as necessary. I assume there are some also external consultant participating to this webinar. So it's open to have a mix of expertise to do the fraud risk assessment. You have regarding the type of fraud and external factor and so on. We are it's very close from the report to the nation released by the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners each 2 years. Sometimes there are some they indicate also that the list of fraud is available on the ACFE website, but also on the AICPA is providing also another list. And you have some a new kind of fraud mentioned here. It's much more detailed, like for fraudulent reporting. It's mentioned channel stuffing. So the channel stuffing, when you force your client to buy something to increase fictitiously your sales. You have also a fraud risk assessment matrix, which is presented in the guide. Another kind of fraud which is mentioned is backdating agreement with software, for instance, to play with the cutoff, to cook the book. And another point which is not in the report to the nation, or not as detailed as here, is about non-financial reporting, because in the report to the nation you are still mentioning the financial statement fraud, but not the non-financial statement fraud. And here they are specifying the ESG KPI, the quality assurance report, which could be manipulated, and safety report also, with an example of refiner and pipeline operator, which should register or issue some safety report, and would be a fraudulent safety report. And the last one is also interesting, about educational and pro credentials, so professional designation, like when such credentials are closed from the business, it could threaten the reputation of an entity. So they are also considering this as a non-financial fraud, which is important. You have some more traditional frauds, so to say, a lot of explanation about misappropriation of assets with key concepts like know your vendor and clean your master data, have control activities like a bidding process or rotation of vendors, and to have also in the sales condition some mention about the whistleblowing hotline. So the reputation risk is also mentioned here. With the reputation risk is could be considered as a separate risk or the end result of other risk. One example, if you have a financial restatement, then the market capitalization could be decreased. So there is a consequences due to the reputational risk due to the financial restatement. Here it's also mentioned the corruption perception index for Transparency International related to corruption. So on next slide, you have oh, sorry, I was too fast. What is also interesting, you have the triangle of fraud, which is presented in the risk assessment, and you have also the pentagon of the fraud, so the evolution of this triangle of Cressey with, you know, the opportunity and the motivation rationalization. And on the second page, you have the pentagon, which is presented as a tool also for fraud risk assessment. There is also, I told you, regarding data analytics and some new kind of fraud. I learned myself one fraud I never heard before. It's a 51% attack. It's an attack on blockchain, disrupting the blockchain and allowing to when you get control of calculation of the blockchain and so on. So this kind, it's very helpful also to have some new kind of fraud presented in this guide to be more aware of such new risk. Regarding the use of data analytics, it's also mentioned here, but it's not new. And it's also promoting data visualization, and they are presenting also a fraud risk assessment heat map. In the COSO, you are risk COSO internal control. You should provide risk assessment. You can provide risk assessment through a risk map. Here you have an example, and you know the risk map is with, on one side, the impact. In this guide is written the significance. On the other side, the likelihood of occurrence. And then on the red side, you can see, for instance, your data protection and privacy risk and bribery corruption, which would be theoretically the higher one with a conflict of interest. So the visualization help then to share the result. You have also a document.
Sorry for interrupting you,
yeah.
Eric. Now we have time for question answers also. So you can see the chat box and you can answer the question. And if any participant want some chat with you, they can give the chat also and also unmute himself.
Okay. Give me 2 minutes to conclude.
Okay, sure.
Before addressing the question. Thank you. Sure. So if I go on the control activities, interesting here is to reassess the level of internal control to fight against fraud. On communication and information, the purple one, you can see also here you have the whistleblower reporting system presented on 2 pages, and also data analytics tools. Okay, and on the last one, you have two new point of focus, and one also linked to data analytics. So to summarize the key principle, the first one, depend on which framework you are discussing, but it's the environment of control. I name it governance. We are expecting governance. On the other side, risk assessment, control activities with preventive and detective measure, and investigation and activities. My conclusion, if you are using the playbook from available in the tools, some entities did it, and when you are going through, the last step is the most difficult. So the fraud risk monitoring, because it's difficult to have an approach going through all the entity level and not fragmented in the investigation service. Okay, thank you. Let's go in the chat. Let me have a look. Okay, so one question. What are the most common red flags on financial fraud in organization? I go through. What are the data analytics tools it's talking about? What are the data analytics tools? Okay, thank you. How companies strengthen internal control? So that's the three questions. Can you confirm? Yes. So what are the common red flags? You can find it in the report to the nation. Okay, it's related to financial fraud organization. I would go, I'm not sure I have this in mind. You should go to the report to the nation to see, because it's not about fraud at all. The red flag for fraud, the main red flag is living beyond your means, but it doesn't mean, I think in the guide it's mentioned when you have pressure to achieve some result. That's mentioned in this guide. When you have a pressure, you want to meet your budget, you want to meet the stock price, the goal, and then in the triangle of Cressay, you have a lot of pressure. So analytically, you can watch the entities which are very aggressive in terms of results. I hope
there is
it's
another question from
the
Rebecca.
question.
Yeah.
The second question, yeah, Rebecca just arrived. I answer about the data analytics. You have on the appendix D some tools, but it not mention which tools those are. So it's a screenshot. What are my high-risk business unit paying the highest risk vendors, but they are not mentioning. I make a search on myself, and I find it's a classical tools, like I can imagine one name was Galvanize, because I tried to find which screenshot it could be. Analytical, I'm looking. Analytical. So what is also difficult in this appendix, it's written it's very small. You need really to increase your screen. Analytical. I think one name was Galvanize, but it's all these tools which are provided on the IT market. It's not a specific one. And even the tools provided by the ACFE is explaining what you can make as a check depending on the fraud type you are looking for. How can companies strengthen internal control? There is a mention in the guide regarding the cost of preventing control, and there is a balance between efficiency and cost. It's mentioned, and sometimes entities are not investing in internal control, in preventive control, and they prefer then to be detective control oriented. So it's a pity, because if you are an expert, you know that the cost at the end will be higher anyway. Yeah, okay. Without hampering operational efficiency. So that's a question from Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca, for this question. How should business balance fraud prevention measure without hampering operational efficiency? So not sure it's addressed in the guide, but it could be also in the guide. I can remind myself if it's hampering too much. Oh, yes. It's one point which is interesting. It's about covert. Covert, it means secret control activities. So it means it should help also to promote deterrence. So it means some control activities like, I don't know, the whistleblowing hotline should be communicated, promoted largely, and some other control activities like exception control activities. If you have a report, for instance, there is an example in the guide when you are you are in charge in the inventory of identified inventory which should be written off, and due to the segregation of duties, someone else should make the write-off to avoid financial fraud. And such analytic control should see if one person is doing the two tasks. And this kind of control should be more detective than preventive. And that's kind of covert control activities. And this should not hamper the operational efficiency. I don't know, Rebecca, if you have a specific question about that, but it should be a balance. And you know, it's also the link with enterprise risk management. What I was mentioning at the beginning, it's always a trade-off. You want to remove a risk, you add some internal control activities, but you will have a new risk raising from these new control activities. So what is important, I think, is to be aware of what is in place, and the risk, the residual risk, you should accept it in your fraud risk management. So fraud risk management, it's the same as normal risk management, but dedicated to fraud. So for fraud risk management, you have always to decide between accepting a risk, reducing it through internal control, or sharing this risk with an insurance. It's mentioned also in the guide, or avoiding the risk. It means doing nothing. And you can also choose for specific activities, doing nothing and to accept the potential risk to avoid to hamper your operational efficiency. So if there is no further question.
Yes, I think you have completed the questions answer session. So thanks, Eric. As we wrap up the today's session, I want to express my sincere gratitude to Mr. Eric for that wonderful sharing, and everyone for your time, engagement, and valuable contributions. It's been a pleasure discussing the topic of fraud risk management with all of you, and I hope this session provide insights that you can apply moving forward. So thank you, Eric.
Thank you very much. I hope you will take time to read the executive summary, 18 pages. That may be the next step after this webinar.
Okay. So how you will share it in the chat box?
I can share it in the chat box, and you can also send it to the participant, and you find email. It. Yeah, you can also find it easily on the web.
Okay, and kindly also share your LinkedIn profile on the chat so the people can approach you.
Yeah, of course. Here we are.
Yes.
And lastly, I share with you, if you are still patient, for 1 second, the link with the different tools, the fraud risk management tools. So
This is a website link or some apps?
Yeah. Here you have the appendices removed from the previous guide, and you have a lot of interesting tools. The last one also is done with a company with on 100 pages, so it's a library. It's very interesting.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Have a nice day.
Have a nice day. Okay. Thank you once again for everyone for participating
You're welcome.
in the
Thank you.
webinar. Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.